Envie de découvrir l'Australie tout en améliorant votre anglais? Écoutez l'histoire avec un véritable accent australien et appuyez-vous sur la traduction française pour comprendre, suivre l'aventure et progresser sans vous perdre.
Chapter 5. Heading to Australia. Canberra, the last big destination. After 2 months in South Africa, the Martin family's suitcases were once again lined up near the door. This time, however, things felt a little different. Emma looked at the little blue notebook Charlie had given them. It was much thicker than at the beginning of their journey. Charlie, United Kingdom. Sophie and Gabrielle, Canada. Ethan, United States. Liam, South Africa. The pages were now full of addresses, tickets, photos and many memories. Thomas sat down next to his sister. "Can you believe it? This is our last destination." Emma gently closed the notebook. "Don't say that like everything is already over." Thomas smiled. "All right, then, our next adventure starts now." On the table, Julian had opened a large map. "Welcome to the preparation for our 5th mission, Australia." Claire pointed to several places on the map. "We'll start in Canberra. Then we'll go to Melbourne, Hobart in Tasmania, and finally Darwin in the north." "All that in 2 months?" Thomas asked. "About 2 weeks in each city," Julian replied. Their parents had a very special program. With the Institut Français and several Australian partners, they were going to organise a tour of photography exhibitions about wildlife and plants. The photos would show French and Australian landscapes, as well as animals and plants that were in danger. An important part of the exhibition would focus on the Great Barrier Reef and the problems affecting this amazing ecosystem. All the information would be written in French and English. Claire gave the twins several texts. "And we need your help." Emma smiled. "I knew that was coming. You'll read some of the English information with our Australian team. We want the texts to be easy for teenagers to understand." Thomas looked at a photo of a sea turtle. "For once, our English lessons will be useful straight away." After a long flight, their plane finally landed in Australia. Their first destination was Canberra, the capital city. Thomas looked surprised when he discovered the city. "I thought Sydney was the capital." "A lot of people think that," Julian replied. Claire explained that Canberra became Australia's capital in the early 20th century. It was chosen partly because Sydney and Melbourne both wanted to be the capital. "So they chose a third city?" Emma asked. "More or less," Julian replied. Thomas took out his phone. First interesting Australian fact. Their new routine was soon organised. This time, travelling from city to city made going to a normal school difficult. Thomas and Emma would therefore do some of their schoolwork by distance learning. They would also have lessons at home several times a week. A teacher helped them with maths, French, history and geography. An Australian teacher also came to give them intensive English lessons. During their first lesson, she told them, "You'll hear English spoken a little differently here." Thomas smiled. "We're getting used to that." The next day, while helping to prepare the exhibition, the twins met a girl their age. Her name was Olivia Bennett. Olivia was 15 years old. Her father was an Australian diplomat who often worked with international partners. Her mother was involved in cultural and environmental projects. Because of her parents' work, Olivia had already travelled to many parts of Australia. She loved photography, animals and swimming. She only spoke English and had a clear Australian accent. She dreamed of visiting France one day. Olivia was friendly, curious and full of energy. She also liked teaching Thomas and Emma Australian expressions when they did not understand them. "Hi, I'm Olivia," Emma answered in English. "Hi, I'm Emma, and this is my brother Thomas." Olivia started talking quickly. The twins looked at each other. Thomas whispered, "She speaks fast." Olivia understood immediately. "Sorry, I'll speak more slowly." Then she smiled. "Don't worry, you'll get used to it." Emma laughed. "That's exactly what people tell us in every country." Olivia was going to travel with her parents for a large part of the exhibition tour. The twins had just met their 6th friend. And once again, French would not be there to help them. Melbourne, between culture and nature. 2 weeks later, the family took a plane to Melbourne. Olivia and her parents travelled with them. From the plane window, Thomas looked at the huge Australian landscape below. "Can you really fly for hours and still be in the same country?" Olivia smiled. "Welcome to Australia." When they arrived, they discovered a city that felt very different from Canberra. Trams moved through the streets, there were cafes everywhere, and colourful street art covered many walls. Olivia took them through some of the small streets and laneways in the city centre. "Melbourne is famous for its culture, sport, music and cafes," she explained. Emma took a photo of a large colourful mural. "Do you really know every city in Australia?" "Not every city. Australia is huge." The second photography exhibition was held in the local cultural centre. On the walls, the photos showed kangaroos, koalas, eucalyptus forests, coral reefs and French landscapes. Thomas stopped in front of a photo of the Great Barrier Reef. A panel explained that this huge coral reef system is home to many different animals and plants. But warmer ocean temperatures and coral bleaching are putting the reef in danger. Emma looked at Olivia. Is coral an animal or a plant? Olivia smiled. An animal. Emma looked surprised. Really? Yep. Thomas immediately said, that's going in the notebook. During the opening of the exhibition, Julian and Claire welcomed Australian guests, French-speaking people living in Australia and English-speaking visitors. The twins helped too. Emma explained some of the photos in simple English. Thomas helped visitors understand the bilingual information panels. At one point, he could not remember a word. Sorry, I don't know the English word. An Australian visitor smiled at him. No worries. Try to explain it another way. Thomas was quiet for a second. The words reminded him of Ethan in Washington. So he used easier words. And the visitor understood him. That evening, Thomas told his sister what had happened. Ethan was right. About what? Emma asked. When you don't know a word, you can explain it with the words you already know. Olivia was listening to them. That's how you learn, she said. A few days later, Olivia introduced them to a very famous Australian food, Vegemite. She put some butter on a piece of toast, then added a very small amount of the dark spread. Thomas looked at the toast carefully. Why are you only putting a little bit on? Olivia smiled. Trust me. Emma tried it first. Her face immediately changed. It's very salty. Olivia laughed. You either love it or hate it. Thomas tried some too. He thought for a few seconds. I think I'll stick with Liam's baguette. Emma laughed. A few days later, their suitcases were packed again. This time, they were going to leave mainland Australia and travel to an island. Olivia looked at the twins. Ready for something completely different? Thomas smiled. After everything we've seen so far? Absolutely. Their next Australian adventure was waiting for them. Next stop, Tasmania. Hobart and wild Tasmania. The plane flew over an island covered with mountains and forests. Welcome to Tasmania, Olivia said. When they arrived in Hobart, the family discovered a city surrounded by nature. The third photography exhibition focused especially on Australian wildlife and the natural environment. Thomas stopped in front of a photo of a small black animal with white marks. What's that? A Tasmanian devil, Olivia replied. Emma smiled. That name sounds a bit scary. Wait until you hear one. Olivia said with a laugh. She explained that the Tasmanian devil is a meat-eating marsupial that lives naturally in Tasmania. The next day, the family left Hobart to spend a few days exploring Tasmania's wild landscapes with a local English-speaking guide. His name was Jack. He spoke with an Australian accent that was even stronger than Olivia's. At the beginning of their walk, Thomas asked him, could you speak slowly, please? Jack smiled. No worries, mate. Thomas looked at Olivia. What did he say? Olivia smiled. No worries means, no problem. And mate is a very common Australian word for a friend. Thomas tried the expression. No worries, mate. Jack gave him a thumbs up. Perfect. The teenagers continued walking through large forests. Jack explained that Tasmania has huge protected natural areas, with mountains, forests and wild landscapes that have developed over millions of years. He also talked about the Aboriginal peoples of Tasmania, whose history on the island began long before Europeans arrived. Later, Claire explained something important to the twins. Australia's history didn't begin with the British. Aboriginal peoples have lived on this continent for tens of thousands of years. Thomas looked surprised. That long? Yes, Claire replied. Australia has one of the world's oldest continuing cultures. Thomas immediately thought about their notebook. Another important fact to remember. During their stay, they also discovered something special about Australian wildlife. Many animals found in Australia do not naturally live anywhere else in the world. Kangaroos, koalas, wombats and platypuses were only a few examples. Emma was fascinated by every new animal. Sometimes it feels like someone invented the animals here. Olivia laughed. Wait until you see a platypus. Why? It has a bill like a duck, a flat tail and it lays eggs. Thomas shook his head. All right. Australia wins the prize for the strangest animals. Everyone laughed. That evening, back at their accommodation, the twins continued their distance learning lessons. The routine was not always easy. After spending the day exploring, they sometimes still had to open their schoolbooks. Thomas looked at his maths work and sighed. Traveling around the world should mean no homework. Emma smiled. Try telling Mum that. Thomas looked towards the next room. I think I'll just do my maths. Even with the jokes, both teenagers had become more independent. They knew how to organize their schoolwork, follow their online lessons and ask for help when they needed it. Before leaving Hobart, Emma opened the little blue notebook. She carefully wrote, Tasmania, wild landscapes, Tasmanian devils and Australian English with Jack. Thomas added, no worries, mate. Then he drew a small Tasmanian devil next to the sentence. Emma looked at the drawing. Good thing you don't want to be an artist. Very funny. They both laughed. Then Emma turned to the next empty page of the notebook. Their journey was not over yet. Their next destination would take them thousands of kilometers north, to a warmer and very different part of Australia. Thomas looked at the map. That's a long way. Olivia smiled. I told you, Australia is huge. The suitcases were ready once again. Next stop, Darwin. Darwin, then a few days of freedom. The change was amazing. After the cooler weather in Tasmania, Darwin felt like a completely different place. It was hot, the plants were tropical, and everything looked very different. How can one country have so many different climates? Emma asked. Olivia showed her the map. Look at the size of Australia. Hobart is far south. Darwin is right up north. The fourth and final photography exhibition was held in a cultural centre in the city. This time, many of the photos were about the ocean. Beautiful pictures of the Great Barrier Reef covered the walls, colourful fish, sea turtles, coral and clear blue water. But some photos also showed white, damaged coral. Julian explained, an exhibition isn't only about showing beautiful pictures. It can also help people understand what we need to protect. All the information panels were bilingual. Emma looked at one of the French-English panels. At the beginning of our journey, I always read the French first. And now? Claire asked. Now, I try to read the English first. Thomas smiled. Me too. Claire looked at her children with a smile. During their journey, they had not only learnt English from books. They had learnt how to live with the language. During their stay in the north, Olivia also told them about Aboriginal Australian cultures. She explained that Australia has a very long human history, with many Aboriginal peoples, languages and traditions. The teenagers understood that such a huge country could not be described with only a few pictures of kangaroos and beaches. Australia was much more complex than they had imagined. At the end of their 2 weeks in Darwin, Julian and Claire's official mission was finished. 4 cities, 4 exhibitions, thousands of kilometers traveled. It was almost time to go back to France. But one evening, Julian asked an unexpected question. What if we stayed for another 2 weeks? Emma immediately looked up. Really? Claire smiled. This time, no exhibitions. No official meetings. Thomas hesitated. No schoolwork? I said no official meetings, Claire replied. Thomas sighed. Well, it was worth a try. The family decided to spend a few days in Adelaide, before travelling along the southern coast of Australia. In Adelaide, everything became more relaxed. They visited markets, walked around the city and simply enjoyed spending time together. Olivia and her parents joined them for part of their stay. One evening, the teenagers ate outside. Olivia introduced them to meat pies, small pies filled with meat that are very popular in Australia. Do you have a new food for us to try in every city? Thomas asked. Pretty much, Olivia replied. Emma looked at her brother. I think that means, more or less. Olivia smiled. Exactly. They spent their final days near the Great Australian Bight, on Australia's southern coast. The teenagers stood quietly in front of the ocean. The wind was strong. In front of them, the horizon seemed endless. Emma took out the little blue notebook. This time, she did not want to write quickly. She slowly looked through all the pages from the beginning. Charlie, Sophie, Gabrielle, Ethan, Liam, then she reached the final destination. She wrote, Olivia Bennett, Canberra, Australia. She added her contact details. Thomas continued, language, Australian English. Then they wrote down their memories, Canberra, our final capital city. Melbourne, the exhibition, street art and Vegemite. Tasmania, amazing animals and, no worries, mate. Darwin, tropical weather and protecting the oceans. South Australia, our final holiday before going home. Olivia looked at the notebook. So I'm number 6? Emma smiled. Our 6th friend. Not bad for one trip. Thomas looked through all the pages. 6 friends, but most importantly, 6 people we would never have met if we'd stayed in France. Olivia thought for a moment. And your English? Thomas and Emma looked at each other. A few months earlier, they would have needed a long time to find the right words. This time, Thomas answered simply, it's not perfect. But we're not afraid to speak anymore. Olivia smiled. That's the important thing. Emma then wrote one last sentence in the notebook, we left home to discover English. We discovered countries, cultures, stories and, most importantly, people. Then she added, speaking another language isn't only about knowing words. It's about being able to enter someone else's world. The sun was slowly setting over the ocean. Thomas looked at his sister. Do you think we'll see everyone again? Emma closed the notebook. We have their contact details. That's not an answer. She smiled. Then yes, I think we'll see them again. A few days later, at the airport, their passports were ready. Their suitcases were checked in. For the first time in more than a year, their plane ticket showed a familiar destination. France. Thomas looked at the planes through the large airport windows one last time. The boy who had left France was not exactly the same anymore. Neither was Emma. They had learnt new words, discovered different accents and understood that English was not spoken in exactly the same way everywhere. But perhaps their biggest lesson was something else. They had learnt that you do not need to speak perfectly to communicate. You need to listen. You need to try. You need to accept your mistakes. And, most importantly, you need to be brave enough to speak. Emma put Charlie's notebook back into her backpack. There were still a few empty pages at the end. Thomas noticed them. "You didn't fill those pages?" Emma shook her head. "No, why not?" She looked at her brother and smiled. "Because maybe our journey isn't really over." A few minutes later, their plane left Australia. Below them, the huge country slowly disappeared into the distance. France was waiting for them. And somewhere between the two, there was still a whole world left to discover.
Envie de continuer l'aventure et de progresser en anglais autrement? Retrouvez Apprendre l'anglais en voyageant sur Amazon et pratiquez grâce à une lecture bilingue intelligente. Pensez pour comprendre, écoutez et apprendre à votre rythme.